Tips on optimizing workflow in Premiere. First of all, ensure that you haven't got any unnecessary programs running, so close down web browsers and so on, so that will speed up the program itself. And in terms of connecting to the server, you might want to do that from the get-go, so just go to Finder here and choose Go Connect to Server, and it is worth storing that address. First time you tap it in, you can click this plus button and then it'll add it to your list of favorite servers like that. So click connect, that's going to add it to the list of servers, and then when you navigate to your particular area, what you can do, as you can see and I've done here, is I've dragged folders I regularly use. For the purposes of this, I've created a new folder in the shared directory to illustrate what I mean, called Group 9 Flipper. Okay, and what I've done is then drag that, see there, up here, taking that folder, dragged it up there, which means I can click on it and access it fairly easily if I need to pull in files from that location. Now I've created this directory in advance, and under it I've created subdirectories where I store material, so it keeps things ordered on the hard disk and I know where to look for particular things. So in order, After Effects files to generate in there, audio files, stuff I export goes there, the footage I upload from the camera, the SD cards, I'll dump there. Any graphics I might generate in Illustrator, Photoshop, or just stuff I've downloaded from wherever, and something called proxies that I'm going to cover shortly. Okay, so without any further ado, I've created those folders in advance. I'm now going to launch Premiere, so it's already launched, great. And I'm going to choose New Project. And what I'm going to do is call it Group 9 Flipper. And when I click Browse, this is the benefit of this, because I've already highlighted that there. I can just go there, and I've chosen that folder. We're going to leave the scratch disks as is, but particularly when you're working on a larger project, and you know it is in 4K resolution, it's worth considering the benefit of using proxies. These are smaller versions of the large files that you're working with, and you can swap between them on the timeline and export at full resolution using the full size version of the files. It just speeds up your workflow. If you want to set that up, you can either do it in the project, so those of you who've started a project, you are able to create proxies of work that's already on the system, but if you're starting a project, it's worth setting it up so every time you import something, it will create proxy files. So to do that, I click this, and on ingest, what I want to do is create proxies. And the setting I suggest you use is 1280 by 720 GoPro Cineform. This is the kind of fastest format to work with. And the proxy destination, what I'm going to do is choose a location, and I've created earlier in my Group 9 Flipper folder a subfolder called Proxies. That's where they're going to go, so I'll know where they live. Click OK, and then it launches the interface, and it's already on the editing tab. If it's not, I tend to work in that because that's the layout I'm familiar with. What I want to be doing now is bringing in some media. So right click here, choose Import, and because I've uploaded my files there, if I go to Group 9, and footage is going to be here, so just a lot of old nonsense here, I'll bring this in. Now because I've set up proxies, and it makes proxies on ingest, what's going to happen shortly, you may notice in the corner here that it's going to launch this program here, Media Encoder, and in the background what this is going to do is going to create smaller versions of these files. There is a window up here that you can refer to. As you can see now, it's populating with this. It shows you the progress of that. You don't need to keep that open. It's going on in the background, and it will take some time to do, and initially it will slow down the system, but once the proxies are there, you'll find it's a lot quicker to work with. Okay, so you won't have had your system set up for working with proxies, because in order to toggle between the full size version, because you may want to check on a particular focus and you want to see the full fat version of the file, and then go back to the smaller ones just to edit more quickly, what you need to do is to add this icon here, which by default isn't on your toolbar down here, which if you hover over it, it says toggle proxies, and you can add any number, well, a limited number, but a range of additional functions. If you click this plus sign here and you click and drag, in this case toggle proxies, onto this bar here like this. So some of the other ones you can toggle safe margins, and one for working with VR footage, so on and so forth. So you can adapt your toolbar for the workflow you're working on. And similarly here, you see I've already added it, toggle proxies, so it doesn't appear there like that. And when it's blue, it means you're working with proxies. Okay. So in the background, I can check here. See, that's the first of those. It's already chuntering away there like that. A few other things I might want to set up as well, and a lot of these tips I've got from like compositing advice from various videos and practitioners online, and one that I think is rather brilliant is to take advantage of the keyboard shortcuts. So if you go up here, Premiere Pro keyboard shortcuts, and this first of all shows you what's mapped to what particular button at the moment, and what you can do is I click render. Now by default this wasn't set up this way. Render entire work area. If I wanted to map that to a particular key, I would drag the key down here like this. So I would go here and drag this to that point there, and then that would mean when I hit the return key, what will happen is that all the clips in the timeline will start to be rendered. And so this is really useful. It's one key. It means if you're just going to take a quick loo break or something, just hit return key and you know that that's done and it's going to be rendering, so it's going to speed things up in the background. So once you've set that, you can click OK. Right, next thing you'll probably want to do is to start working on your footage. So typically create a new sequence by taking a clip from the bin here that's of the resolution that most of my clips are, and dropping it onto the timeline. So let's just take this for instance. It should remind you that if you want to find out the resolution of clips, you can scroll through the list view like this, and if there's a function you're constantly referring to, such as the video info, you can click and drag it and move it here, so that's always available. And while we're on the business of this, another thing you might want to move and make it more visible, because particularly when you're working collaboratively, it's maybe less important to know the time code of when the thing starts, but if you've got this description field here, you could add commentary on the nature of the clip. So you could call this good, and then this might be rubbish, and this will obviously flag up to someone that you've gone through, looked at the quality of the clips. You could, once clips are in here, you can rename them. So this, instead of being Wired 2015, could be intro best version. Okay, so that makes it a kind of more meaningful. Additionally, while we're in this area here, just as you created folders to store the actual physical media, bear in mind that everything you do here in terms of creating the timeline creates new files, so it doesn't actually destroy the media that you've uploaded. But in terms of organizing your material, you may want to go here, click new bin, and have a bin for audio, another bin for clips, maybe another bin for sequences, and so on and so forth, graphics, whatever works, or split it into different scenes. So as these are all clips, why not just go ahead and just drop them into the clips bin like that. Now you can see, particularly when I've got a lot of material here, it's really quite useful in terms of like not showing that stuff that I don't need to see. So intro best version, well, let's see if it really is. I can't remember what this thing is. So I've dropped it onto the timeline here. forget if I hit the backslash key and they can then see all of it. Oh Lord. Right, okay. So this is now created a sequence, and one thing you can do is come up here to sequence settings, and by default it just comes up with ARRI Cinema, because I think that's the first one on the list. If you change it to custom, what that then enables you to do is to change the what's called the codec, the way it kind of compresses the file for video previews. And by general consent, the most efficient one is this one, GoPro Cineform 10-bit. So I can change it to that, and if I click OK, it does create large files, but it creates files that the machine can work with very quickly. So I'll do that there like that. It's a one-time hit. Okay, so now I've got a piece of video on the timeline. Next thing I can do to speed up playback of this is I can drop the resolution of this monitor here like this. It's on full by default, but you can set it to half resolution or even quarter resolution. Bear in mind, a 4K file will fit on the large iMac monitors, but probably when you've compressed it down to what is effectively a quarter of the screen, it won't be at full resolution anyway. So half resolution isn't that much of a loss. Another thing you can do, in fact there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do by clicking on this spanner. One thing that's quite useful to have on, if you notice here, I've checked the box show drop frame indicator. So all the time this button is green, it means it's actually playing back at proper speed like that. And you can change settings such as, does the resolution default to full res when you pause it, and what's the resolution when it plays back. So it may be that I want to have full resolution when it's paused to actually see the quality of the pause video, but I'm quite happy to work with quarter res when it's playing back. Okay, so that's that created bins. Other things that you can do as well. By default, Premiere uses different colours and icons, as you can see here, to distinguish between sequences and clips. In fact, to be OCD about it, I'd probably put that sequence in there like that. And good practice as well is, say I started working on the sequence, adding a few clips here, there and everywhere. I might get to the end of the session and then I do a duplicate and call this version 2 or some other numbering system, or call it Tim's best version or backup version, and then it means any changes I make subsequently, this is a kind of stored version of where I got up to before I created this variant of it. So rather than go in and undo the work of somebody who's come along and done a kind of edit of a particular sequence, what you might want to do is duplicate that timeline, make all the changes you want, and you've still got access to the other version of that. Another thing to just bear in mind in terms of project settings, file project settings, just for your reassurance, it's under, I'm going to have to search for this now, auto save preferences, Premiere Pro preferences up here. One of them is for auto save. You will notice when you go back into the file structure, it automatically creates a directory called autosave, but by calling up this, you can change how frequently it does it. So by default, I think it's set up to save every 15 minutes up to a maximum of 20 of those. Crashes do sometimes happen when things go awry, but autosaves means that depending on the duration you set, you shouldn't lose more than 10 or 15 minutes of work. Okay, the next thing I wanted to show you, so those tips about speeding up the workflow. So just the thing I pointed out earlier about rendering, I just press the enter key, return key now, sorry. That's all I needed to do, and that's now rendering the work here, and you can see that that's changed from a yellow bar to a green one, which means all of that is perfectly rendered. Importing material from other programs, because this is part of the Adobe Creative Suite, it means it ties in really kind of quite nicely with other programs in that suite. So I'm going to create a new bin here for graphics. Come up, do that first. Yeah, and then I'm going to import into that bin. So right click, import, and I've already placed Flipper graphics. Here we go, a Photoshop file. And what's great about this is that if you've worked with Photoshop at all, you'll know that it uses layers, and you build up the image by placing one layer on top of the other, and then various effects like transparency and filters and so on and so forth can be applied. Here we go, so it's importing this now, and you have the option of either importing it as one flat file, in other words it ignores all the layers, or you can import all the layers individually. So merge all layers, flat file, merged layers, that's to do with if you merge some layers and not others in Photoshop. But individual layers is really useful. You can choose which ones you want to bring in. As you can see, there's all the different layers of the thing itself. Or you can even import it as a sequence. So it creates a sequence with all the layers set out. So let's do that for argument's sake. Bring that in, and now what you'll see is there's the layers, and then here is the sequence. So let's double click on this. Let's wait for it. Here we go. And just to prove that they are separate layers, we can turn off individual elements of these, or I could animate these. So I can use Photoshop to mock up quite a complex arrangement of elements that I later want to bring animation to, and then either bring it in as separate elements and construct them manually, or it will actually do that for me like this. Okay. If I want to muck around with this, get this right, and then bring it into an existing sequence I've got, another great feature you can use is if I highlight all of this, and I can right click on it and choose nest, and it creates an element here in the project window. So I might call this photo 01 or anything like that really, and that then becomes available as an element that I can then drop into other sequences. And anytime I want to go in and tweak this, I can open it up again, and it launches that particular sequence, and I can tweak and refine as I see fit. Okay, so let's go back here, and for argument's sake, what I'm going to do is just take it because it's quicker to do it like this. No, that's not very interesting. Right, let's see if we can graphic. Please be something more interesting. Oh yeah, sort of. Right, so there's just a single element from there. I'm just going to come up here and resize that, so something, yeah, maybe like that. Okay. Now let's say I want to do something with this in After Effects, and I've already dropped it on my timeline. What I'd suggest you do, because then you've got a before and after, is if you hold down the Option key and click and drag upwards, what you'll do is create a copy of that track on the track above. So you've still got the original there, but what I'm going to do with this is right click and choose. Right click works. It did and it didn't. Right, okay. Please replace with After Effects composition. Now this is where the beauty of the programs being linked together comes in. You see, After Effects is launching in the background. Okay, this is saying, because it's on my laptop, I haven't got enough hard disk space, saying where do I want to save this? And because I've already created this, let's go to my Group 9 Flipper. There we go. Yes, folder for After Effects, that's where I want to create it, and I'm going to call this, I know some nonsense, best bit maybe. That's one. So that's picked up that clip, it's going to launch it already with a new composition. And what I want to do with that is just have a kind of text title going over the top of that. So I'm going to go layer, new text. We'll be covering After Effects more fully in a subsequent session, but if I go here and just best bit, okay, highlight that, and just for argument's sake I'll go to my effects and presets, and there are some animation presets. I'm going to use these, and there's a hell of a lot of these, so let's do something curves and spins, bloom flower, why not? Okay, drop that on that layer and let's see what we get here. Really? Okay. So I just saved that there like that. It's not very big, to be honest, so I'd probably be better off making this bigger. So if I go to the text layer here, and bump up the size of that, and then just move it across here so we get best layer. Really working. Save that again. Now I can Alt Tab back to Premiere Pro, and you can see because it's linked, it's gone red, that bar there. So this is another instance where I can see it, but I doubt that's going to play back. Now it's going to be playing back in real time. And the beauty of doing it this way is I can see before and after by turning off. Okay, there's a bit of a lag there, but you see I can turn on and off the best bit to see if one works. So I've got the original still, and then I've also got this fella going on there like that. If I was to press enter now, then it would work quickly to, let's try that, see how long that will actually take. That's pretty good. And now it's all green. If I want to create an After Effects composition from the get-go rather than something already existing on the timeline, I can go up to File, Adobe Dynamic Link, and New After Effects Composition. And if I do it through this, it means it will appear in my project bin here, and then I can drop it in wherever I see fit. So as I say, After Effects, feel free to play around with that in this session and kind of get a feel for it, and I'll come around and give some thoughts on that. But we will be touching on it in a more complex way in a subsequent session. Okay, so let's assume I've done all this and I'm happy with this as a video. Maybe we'll just add something else in there because we can. So what else have we got here? Clips, intro, outro. Oh, okay, let's chuck that on the end there like that. Does anything happen in this? Oh, very good. Yeah, okay. Right, so there's the totality of my video. This I should, if I just press render, that will quickly render that in the background there like that. Now I'm good to export it. And the media encoder I mentioned earlier, let's see how the progress is doing. That's all done. Good. And I didn't actually, the proxy is toggled on and off. So this is not using the proxy full res version. I'm going to export all of this, so let's put an out point there and in point at the beginning. I haven't bothered with any kind of fades up and transitions or whatever. This is just demonstration purposes. So save the project, although I've got auto save on. Saving. Now, when it comes to the export, it kind of makes sense to media here. Now, I've been using H.264 because it creates the smaller files and it means it's fairly easy to upload to YouTube. But in terms of speeding up the time of exporting it, although it creates massive files, you can use the GoPro 10 bits preset, which is under QuickTime. It's a variant of that. So I choose QuickTime, and GoPro 10-bit here. The important thing here is to click use previews, because if you recall, we were rendering stuff and it was creating those previews, so they're already there, which means it's not going to have to re-render everything to export it. So then I'd find a location. So in this instance I'd go here and I'd go export. I can change the name should I want to, but if I click save, let's change the name, put it in that directory. I've got two options now. I can either just click export and then it will do that, and what it will do is lock up the program, i.e. you won't be able to carry on editing while it does that, or I can avail myself, if I choose Q, of this program that was making the proxies earlier. This is Media Encoder. So what it does, it will load all the information into Media Encoder. I've already told it what I want. Here it is, it's just opening that up, so we'll just wait a moment, and what will happen is an entry will appear here. I'll just highlight that entry and then click this go button here like this, and then that will render the project in the background, meaning I can go back to editing, carrying on working. So Media Encoder is really useful. It may slow down the interface slightly, but it does mean that you can be assured that you've got a kind of test export of something to check that that works properly. This is taking somewhat longer than I was hoping to fill, and here we go. Right, so here cancel. No, I don't want to change anything here. I'm just highlighting that there, clicking there, and what you'll see, it's starting to encode that. It's probably going to do that quite quickly, but I can straight away go back in here and start working either on another sequence or thinking now I want to do another test of how this kind of works. Yeah, I did that. But that will then create the file in the background. I don't think it shows the progress for that here. But nonetheless, that means although it's created, so if we go to Flipper, has it done it yet? You can always check by going here. No, it's still taking a while. But we've set it to go into this bin here, so here we are, it's creating it at the moment. As you can see, progress isn't finished yet. Another thing you can do, I'm not going to cover this time round, but I may well do it for the master folder in which you deposit your finished projects, is you can set up a watch folder. So as you dump maybe your large Cineform files in there, I'll set it up to any files that come in there. It will also create a version, a smaller size version, that I can then upload to YouTube. Okay, that's all I was going to cover for today. So it's about improving the workflow. It's about settings you can use to speed up your working and also to work more efficiently in a collaborative fashion. I kind of feel I'll have to wait for that to finish as a kind of moment of completion. And is it really going to take another 25? No, it's not. Good. Okay, stop.